Well, it's a big week on Wall Street. Investors looking for some clarity here. Now, of course, we've got the Fed this week, and we all expect them to hike rates on Wednesday. But then there's the British exit proceedings that could begin as early as tomorrow. Elections in the Netherlands, the Netherlands really could roil global markets. And investors also today waiting for this clarity on Obamacare, the replacement in the CBO score. It's a very busy, very skittish day and week, perhaps. So what can we expect? I want to go to Phil Flynn. He's at the CME. Jonathan Corpina, he's at the New York Stock Exchange. And Gerri Willis in our own newsroom. Gerri, we've got a lot of stuff on both sides, from politics to economics here. A lot of big dark clouds and question marks.
Well, that's right. Some of the problems are domestic, right? We're trying to figure out the price tag for the replacement of Obamacare, that's for sure. And we're worried about the stock market generally, right? Because we're priced for perfection here. But then there are overseas problems that could crop up here and bite investors in the butt, so to speak. For example, we've got the Federal Reserve considering raising rates. That might not be a negative. But what about the Netherlands, where a very, very hard right-wing candidate may win the presidency there? Or the Brits are going to get out of the EU possibly very, very soon indeed. It's just not clear how these things are going to shake out, and to the degree they shake up the usual and routine trading relationships, they cause problems for investors in this marketplace. Look, when you're trading at 22 times earnings on the Dow, 27 on the S&P 500, you don't have a lot of wiggle room. And if some of these investors get antsy, if they get anxious, they just might stampede out, and that's what everybody's watching for today.
You know, Jonathan, I think it was a foregone conclusion that the Fed would raise rates, so that may not be necessarily news, but some of these other things that Gerri just talked about, Geert Wilders winning in the Netherlands, apparently they say no one would partner with him for a coalition government, but it would bode well for Le Pen and others. And, you know, if the EU starts to fall apart here as an entity, that could really weigh on the markets.
Absolutely. I mean, if you look at what our market has seen over the last 3-4 months, there's been no major negative headlines that has gotten in our way, right? So we've just evaporated higher. We've drifted higher and higher over the last quarter or so, and now we're getting to a point where it's really interesting. We obviously have our own domestic issues here. We're going to get some economic data out of China tonight, what's going on in Europe. There's a lot of things that can really derail this market at this time, and as Gerri was saying, as this market has gotten higher and prices have gotten higher, investors definitely will get a little bit skittish as to when a real major negative headline story might come out. So it's more of what's going to happen afterwards. We are going to see a little bit volatility back and forth, expect a little bit of a pull-off, but let's just hope there's no fear, there's no panic to it, because once that happens, you do get a snowball effect. Yeah,
panic can beget panic, but maybe that's what's happening in the oil market. Phil, since oil started coming down, and particularly since 50 wasn't able to hold, I see the equity markets are getting hurt too. Do you think America came back too quickly with respect to these rigs? Now we've doubled the count from a year ago. And could that actually put pressure on OPEC to say, or Saudi Arabia to say, forget the OPEC deal?
I think in the short term, you're absolutely right. Maybe too much too soon. But over the long run, absolutely not. We're going to need every barrel in a couple of years that we can actually pump in this country because of the lack of investment in other places. So I think that's going to be a big deal. And make no mistake about it, all these things that are happening with the Federal Reserve, this election in the Netherlands, the Dutch election, all of this could actually impact the cost of oil. Those tensions that we're seeing between the Netherlands and Turkey right now are very important, because that anti-Islamic vote, or that party that's gaining some ground, is causing riots in the streets over there and uprisings. That could actually impact the flow of oil, because a lot of oil goes through the Turkish states. What the Fed does, not so much about raising rates today, but what they're going to do on the dot plot, what they're going to do in the future, could impact the oil as well, because if the rates go up too high, the dollar goes up, and that hurts oil.
I should also point out for the audience, it looks like Scotland is going to push on with the second attempt at the independence vote as well. Scotland, of course, wants to be tethered to the EU, unlike the Brexit vote, Gerri. So, again, a complicated mix of things going on here.
You know, it's just another destabilization for Europe, and we rely on Europe as a major trading partner. So the degree to which they're having troubles, it also affects us. But I want to mention something else, because you mentioned health care. And I want to say that the CBO, while we're waiting for their score of the Republicans' plan, there was a score of the 2015 repeal bill. Let me give you some numbers from that, because I think it's instructive for today. For For example, the number of folks who could be without care, without an insurance policy, under that straight-up repeal bill, the CBO
Hold on
said
1 second,
18
Gerri,
million.
because we've got